What were you thinking, going into the sunflowers?
The old man asked as he wound gauze around Derek's arm. What were you thinking? I saw you go into the field too.
I went behind the field, to hide from the crazy man with a gun.
You were lurking around out there at 2 a.m. What was I supposed to think?
And you should have known that if he couldn't kill whatever was attacking him with a gun, going in after him was an idiot move.
I wanted to save him.
Oh, so you were armed too?
No.
He shook his head. I caught the phrase stupid kids muttered under his breath. Then he took off his hat, set it in the middle of the table, and glanced at each of us.
I'm going to tell you what's going on here. And then I hope you can help me.
Derek and I exchanged a glance. How do we know we can trust you?
He just saved our lives.
He was hanging around outside in the middle of the night, for no good reason.
It was a good reason, and if you just listened to me for a damn minute, you'd understand.
Come on.
I whispered, squeezing Derek's hand. Okay, fine. The old man straightened himself, and then began to speak.
The Gershons started this farm almost 20 years ago. They bought the plot of land from an old widow, who had lived here her entire life. She didn't want to sell it, but she needed the money. Well, they drew up the contract, but at the last moment, they changed the paperwork and tricked her into selling it for half the price. When she realized she'd been tricked, she cursed the land itself. But they just laughed. They didn't believe in curses, or superstitions, or the supernatural.
The old man stopped and looked pointedly at Derek. He broke eye contact and looked at the floor.
Of course, as soon as they planted the sunflower field, they realized the curse was very real. Eventually, they tried to sell the property. But by that time, news of the curse had spread, and they would only get a fraction of what they paid. They weren't willing to lose their money, so they kept it. And with time, they learned that if they followed certain rules and stayed careful, they could grow some crops and turn a profit. But no one is perfect. After some close calls, the Gershons decided they didn't want to risk their lives, but were perfectly fine with risking other people's lives. So they started hiring people to tend to the farm. They preyed on the weak, the disadvantaged, the desperate, single mothers, undocumented immigrants, people who were new to the town, who hadn't yet heard of the curse, or were too desperate to care. The deal was a good one, to a share of the crops, a place to live, and decent pay. This is where I come in. My daughter was one of these people. She was a single mother, and I was terrible.
He paused and swallowed, as if swallowing emotion, but his face remained stoic.
I wouldn't let her and her son stay with me when she was evicted from her apartment. I thought it would cause too much conflict with my wife, and I was trying so hard to make it work, but now I see that none of that mattered. A few weeks later, she was hired by the Gershons, and neither she nor my grandson were ever seen again.
Derek and I sat there in stunned silence.
I'm so sorry. That's horrible.
Then help me get them back.
Get them back?
They're not dead. You see, I recognized the voice in the cornfield. It's the voice of my grandson.
Silence fell over the three of us. Derek and I looked at each other. The old man must have noticed our confusion, because he continued.
The victims aren't always killed. Sometimes they're transformed. Like my daughter and grandson, in the cornfield. Or the scarecrow. Or the pigs.
I clapped my hands over my mouth.
The pigs?
He nodded.
No. I called the police. When I saw one. And they came, and I think they...
Tears burned my eyes.
I think they killed him.
I'm so sorry to hear that. But it's not your fault. The Gershons have a lot of power in this town. They have a deal with the police. Dirty cops have been known to get rid of evidence in the sunflower field. I've devoted the past 3 years of my life to this. I've run into every obstacle, know everything there is to know. A lot of it I learned from the widow's children directly.
So is there a way to get them back? The people who were transformed?
Yes. I was never able to get into the house before. The Gershons made sure of that. But now...
He reached into his pocket and pulled out what appeared to be a small mesh bag. Within, among what looked like dried plant material, I could make out something long and white. A bone?
This is what the widow used to create the curse. Her daughter told me it was hidden behind the medicine cabinet in the bathroom, and there it was. Using this, I should be able to reverse the curse's effects. So, will you help me?
I paused, looking into the old man's blue eyes. And then I nodded. We began at dawn. The sun crested over the hill, sending long shadows over the path. The old man led us to the edge of the cornfield, which now in the daylight didn't look so ominous. The stalks swayed gently in the breeze, illuminated in gold from the rising sun.
Are you ready?
Derek and I stood several feet away as he lifted the bag. He recited several sentences of Latin or some other language, something he'd memorized in his research, I assumed. He nearly shouted the last sentence. Then he dumped the contents of the bag on the ground. The dried leaves scattered in the wind. The bone twirled in the air, then bounced into the dirt. For a minute, nothing happened. But then I heard a soft rustling from within the corn. Slowly, it grew louder and louder. I grabbed Derek's hand and squeezed it, bracing myself for some eldritch horror to come out. But it had worked. A woman walked out of the corn, tall and thin, holding hands with a smiling little boy. I watched, my eyes welling up with tears, as the woman hugged her father. Then as both of them hugged the little boy.
Come on, it's time for you to come home.
The old man started down the driveway towards the main road, with his daughter and his grandson in his wake. Dread twisted my gut. Something felt off. He was just leaving? Without looking for the others? Without even a glance in our direction? I scanned the farm, but I didn't see anyone emerging, didn't hear any voices.
Hey, what about the others?
The old man stopped and turned around. He wasn't smiling.
I'm sorry.
My heart sunk further.
What do you mean, you're sorry?
The curse can't be reversed. The only way to free someone from the farm is to give someone in their place. I'm sorry.
The old man said. He put his arm around his daughter. She looked back at us with sadness in her eyes, holding her little boy's hand. And then he continued down the driveway.
Don't walk away.
Emily? Come back here. Right now. Emily! This time, Derek's voice had an odd quality to it. It was muffled, raspy. I whipped around and froze. Straw was poking out of Derek's mouth.
No!
I screamed, stumbling over to him. But it was too late. His skin was sickly gray. His eyes were glassy and blank. And his lips, they almost looked like they'd been drawn on with marker. I watched in horror as the man I loved turned into a scarecrow. His body was still above me. Arms stretched stiffly out at his sides. Flannel shirt stuffed with straw. Burlap head hanging limply on his shoulders. And then he moved. His head swung wildly towards me. His eyes, now nothing more than buttons, fixed squarely on me. I ran. I ran as fast as I could towards the house. But I could feel something changing inside me. Everything felt off balance. My legs felt all wrong, bending and twisting underneath me. I stumbled inside and collapsed to the floor, crying. But I knew I was changing, too. For some reason, my changes are happening more slowly than Derek's. But when I look in the mirror, I can see the changes. My nose is longer. My ears are twisted. My skin is pinker. So I tried to type this up as quickly as I could. Please, stay far away from Vershawn Farm. Don't buy their stuff, don't go to work there, don't do anything. Run as fast as you can and never look back. I would say more, but it's getting harder to type. The space between my fingers is melting away. My hands are growing stiff. In just an hour or so, they will be hooves, and I will have no way of communicating with the outside world. So please, whatever you do, don't come to Vershawn Farm.